This is the Aftermarket Radio Network.
Welcome, everyone, to yet another episode of Diagnosing the Aftermarket A to Z. I'm Matt Fonslow, and today I have the pleasure of inviting Glen Forehand to the podcast. And for one, just get this right out of the way, he's a really good dude, because when Danielle, my wife, is going through some health things in the hospital, he reached out privately and offered to come down to the shop and fill my shoes, essentially elbow me out of a job, because he had shown up. Then my boss would have seen what a real tech can do, and then I would have been job hunting. So that's the truth. Former small town business owner who's transitioning to some mobile with a interesting dilemma that I think we're going to talk about some other time. But today we're going to want to talk about programming. Before we get rolling too quickly here, though, let's thank our sponsor, NAPA AUTOTECH Training. Are you tired of searching for trained technicians? If so, let NAPA AUTOTECH help you with Build-A-Tech from their Build-A-Tech program. These 3-day courses cover one of 4 topics: brakes, electrical, steering and suspension, or HVAC, through a combination of classroom lecture, hands-on, and utilizing training mock-ups. Visit NAPAAutotech.com. So thank you for joining me, Glen.
Thanks for having me. And quit bullshitting your audience there about losing a job. My God, I'd be a looby at your shop.
No. I can replace wiper blades pretty good.
See, I can't even get that down.
You do the techie hard stuff. I could probably do like 6 or 7 sets of wiper blades a day.
I'll power up your scan tool for you.
I think that's got to be close to beating flat rate. I don't know.
Let me throw it out there quick for your support of your advertisement too, for the small town big NAPA fan here. They've treated me fantastic. So
they're nice to me. They answer my emails. They have a lot of stuff, actually. The more I've dealt with them, the more I've learned about what they all do, kind of across the board with their kind of apprenticeship program. It's not even that. It's more like almost a career path, and it's very well fleshed out. I don't know who else has something quite that well fleshed out yet with, a path, recommended things for a management to provide or direct the apprentice or the technician, whatever, and then the links to the online training, and then instructor led. And I had no idea. And then equipment sales. I had no freaking idea that NAPA sold as much equipment as they did. Like, I had no idea.
By far, too, been the best price on Milwaukee I've found, hands down. Beat everyone else by like $25 on a $200 purchase or something. They've tried to be real helpful to me. So, I definitely appreciated what they do. I don't think my business was paying all their bills, but they acted like it. And I thought that was pretty cool. At least my store. Anything they could possibly do to help, they were on it, like right now. And that went all the way up to their district reps and all that. So
that's pretty good advice, actually. Just thinking at the front counter, even treating every customer like they pay all your bills. I don't know that we ever really think that way. At least a perspective to kind of consider, treating every customer like they pay all your bills.
We never know when they might, at least for the month, right? I'm not a big butt kisser to customers, very straight up dude, but I do try to treat people with respect. If I advise someone on their car, I give them the same advice I give my mother, is kind of what I go by. That's my compass, I guess. Yeah, but treating people good. Look, I'm giving them a shout out. Today it does help in ways we don't always see it. They haven't helped me with programming, though. Why we're here.
They probably have a class on it. That's the end of the episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Go NAPA.
So, yeah, you're talking about programming a few days ago. So I should have grabbed the freaking magazine. I don't know why I didn't bring it with me. But it was a very surprising number. And I think it was P10 did a survey. It looked to me like predominantly shop owners, shop managers responded to the survey. And one of the questions was, how many of you are doing programming? I think it was hovering slightly below or slightly above 50%. I find that fascinating. To me, on the high side of reality, because I'm thinking around where I live. And again, I think the last few episodes, I might be living in a bubble, but independent shops, there's maybe 2 other shops around me that do any level of programming.
Right. There's 0 here.
I don't know how they do it. Just for our shop alone, we're doing programming 1 car a day at least. It's usually more, some way, somehow. And then you add the work we do for collision shops. That's what drives the vast majority of programming we do. That's multiple times per day. And then other repair shops, they finish something up, send it on over, or I might run over to their shop and do some programming, learn keys or something, and help them out that way. So I thought this would be a good topic. I was glad you brought it up the other day.
It's something that's, been frustrating here because it's like, if a car comes in, I have a Diag, it's BCM. I have to send them 40 minutes to the dealer, 40 minutes away. I didn't get enough flow in to justify the expense, especially being newer business. But it was getting to the point where I was seeing it enough. I've been so tempted, to jump in that realm and then find out, well, what am I going to pull from other shops that are sending them, far away? Am I going to save tow bills? Can I market it that way? Kind of icing on the cake, our fire truck, we lost our fuel pump control module on a 1-ton GM. I have to send that to the dealer. And so it's like, I really got to look more into this. I get on our mutual friend Hawkins YouTube and I see he's got the 40,000 foot overview of programming. Scares me to death at that point, to be honest with you. Well, luckily we have a good network online. Some guys might be nice enough to answer some questions if I get in the problems. But you get into the thing, and I know it's not so much on our domestics, but you're hearing about braking modules and how much does this module cost? And then you have to have several different tools because there's not one tool for everything, with the cost and the expense. And it kicks me, well, should I use OE level equipment? Should I have went that way with my diagnostic stuff? But I'm seeing a huge influx of foreign cars. And guess what they almost all are having problems with? Modules.
I think the blunt answer is J2534 generic, J-box programming versus OE. I'm trying to think of a situation where J is better than OE, and there probably is. It's just escaping me. And I don't want to imply I don't use a J-box either. There are car lines that I do not use factory tools to program, mostly because I don't have the factory tool to do it anyways. Number of car lines is dropping as I'm buying tools trying to fit the cars that I'm seeing. OE always trumps J tools, simply because it seems on certain car lines or even just certain processes, J2534 can struggle or leave you hanging. OE generally doesn't. Like if this is something you're starting to get into, it's really hard to just say the big three we see in our doors is GM, Ford, Chrysler. So I got to get MDI or MDI2 for GM and VCM3 for Ford, MDP for Chrysler. Well, that's, maybe not in the grand scheme of things a terrific expense, but it's an expense you may not be ready and may not give you the ROI you need right away. Now you're looking at, what do I see the most of? Not only just for programming, but also diagnostics. And if it's overwhelmingly Ford, it makes more sense to get a VCM3 and then subscribe to IDS FDRS. Now you're factory level Ford. And now you have that for not just programming, but diagnostics. There's certain Ford lines that you're going to need to have your VSP to program keys. So it will take you to a portal and you're going to have to enter your credentials. So that becomes an issue if you're replacing anything theft related. You're going to have a VSP to add the keys. So it's probably a good idea to go get that anyways. And then get a J2534 device for the others until you're like, okay, we're doing a terrific amount of Toyota. That was a perfect example because they're so J2534 friendly. You're pretty good to go. But, maybe it's Nissan, just a terrific amount of Nissans. Like, okay, I got to try to get a VI2, VI3. And they're hard to come by right now.
I was just going to say, and then they're like on back order right now, right?
Oh, lots of them. Lots of interfaces are on intergalactic back order. So I know that's a really long-winded and jump around loopy answer, but it's kind of the truth. I tried to do Nissan J2534 and use the Nissan R2R, and it's just always giving me fits. I get my hands on a VI2 and I have no issues now. It's just clear sailing.
Okay, so your experience, to the new guy coming in, you're naming these different tools. Well, I'm using this because I had a problem with that and that and that. It's like you're speaking Chinese. I'm on the forums enough and following enough that I'm following you. I remember when I didn't though, which was not that long ago. It's such a deterrent a small shop or a one-man show who's trying to hire someone, and it's like, oh my God, what are these guys going through? This is crazy. We're talking, I need this tool, that tool, that tool. You start Googling the prices, and then you're seeing guys that we all look up to, like yourself and Hawken and, all the big names in the industry. And we're watching you guys rip your hair out sometimes. And we're like, wait a minute, why would I subject myself to that? But is it sustainable not to? And my answer, I think it is no. It is not sustainable to avoid programming.
A lot of the issues, I don't know that I really run into that many programming issues. When I do, there's other issues with the car that I probably was aware of anyways. Trying to program a module that I knew may have some network issues. To get the module programmed, you can kind of get it isolated by itself. The situation I just said there where I know there might be a network issue is not usually my client's car. It's a shop sent it to me. They've diagnosed it. They think it needs this module. I'm struggling. And okay, I think it might have a network issue. So I don't want to imply programming is always a big headache. It can be, but it's usually more like PC type issues. And I don't mean like hardware, like your computer sucks. When you get into anything using PC, especially for us in the aftermarket, there's no one there that just really sets the stuff up, sends it to you, and away it goes. Buying a laptop or laptops, and then you're going to a website that you find on nastf.org, nastf.org, or I think OEM One Stop is another website that takes you to the manufacturer's website specific for aftermarket to get that program. We're picking on Ford. Let's stick with it. Motorcraftservice.com. And you're going to create an account, and that account's free. And then you're going to go to Diagnostic Tools tab. I'm going by memory here, so I might not be spot on here, but you're going to the Diagnostic Tools tab, open that up, and you'll see like IDS and FDRS. And you don't really get to choose between the two. It's going to download both of them, but you click on that, and it's going to take you to where you can pay your money to now download this software. And I think there's also a link to buy the interface. And the interface is the VCM3. It's plugs into the laptop, plugs into the DLC. It looks like many J2534 boxes. It looks like a red version of GM's MDI2, which is their interface. And I think I said something with Chrysler MDP. It doesn't look like anything like one of those. It looks like a little HP tuner's dongle. So that's what you're going to do. And then you download and install this firmware. And you may have to update some stuff. The domestic vehicles, specifically Ford, it's pretty easy. Like that would be a good car line to start programming on. Just to get up and going. They have pretty good tech support for actually doing the programming. It's really forgiving. They don't make it difficult for you. And you can do it generically. You could use a JBox and a program they call FJDS. It'll look very much like the factory's firmware software, but it's only going to do the programming. And it's still a good one to start out with.
I've heard that kind of echoed too, that probably Ford, then GM, and then Chrysler's the way behind the two.
Well, Chrysler's rough. When GM works, so GM, when you go to their website, it will have you download stuff, but that's not how you use it. So they have something called TechLine Connect. And what's nice about it is for us, you can buy an interface. You could use a JBox. I think JBox works pretty good, but I also think the MDI2 it's not that expensive. Like we're talking, I think under $1,000 for the interface. And then it's legit GM. It has a couple of advantage on the diagnostic side, or for sure one advantage, unless some of the JBoxes have picked up the ability to do it, but I don't think so. But for network analysis, GM has a tool that uses the MDI2, and it's pretty nice program. Pedro De La Torre has some really good case studies using it. So there's an advantage to having that. And so they have this, we'll just call it a portal, because that's kind of how you use it. And you can go short term. You can buy short term subscriptions, 24-hour subscription, or if you're going to program, the important part is when you're doing programmings is you buy per VIN. So I think it's $45 per VIN, and that lets you program that vehicle multiple times over 2 years.
Oh, okay. I didn't know they set it up like that.
Yeah, the reason I say that is I'm pretty sure it's not unlimited. You can't program that car for an unlimited number of times for 2 years. I think it's limited by the number of modules the vehicle has. If the vehicle has 10 modules, you could program the PCM 10 times in those 2 years. I've not run into a situation where I've ever gotten anywhere close to that. Something to keep in mind. And $45 is not that brutal. When TechLine Connect works, GM's another good car line to program with. The worst parts maybe searching for RPO codes, which might determine which calibration you're going to put into it. And you're either looking for the sticker in the glove box or in the trunk, or you're looking for the QR code, I guess, on the side on the newer GMs, which often isn't that complete. And then hopefully in your area, you have a dealer that supports something called RepairLink. And that's a parts cataloging system that the dealers allow you to look up parts and then order from them online. That does a really, really good job of giving you the RPO codes. And that seems to be pretty complete. Go to the RepairLink website, paste in the VIN, opens up kind of that vehicle, and you'll see another tab next to the VIN number called VIN Attributes. You click on that, opens up a drop down, or I guess a utility almost, another window, and it's got all the RPO codes in it for that vehicle, and that helps immensely.
That's great to know that for a variety of reasons, even outside of programming. I had no idea.
When you hear people complaining about programming, a lot of times it'll be GM, and it has nothing to do with them. A lot to do with TechLine Connect can be very, very finicky. And then there's a couple of tricks with it sometimes where to get it to work, you don't open it. By open it, I mean you go to your browser, usually Google Chrome. That's what I've been using. Been pretty good luck. But I have to run it as an administrator. Instead of just left clicking or double clicking left mouse button on there, you right click, opens up that utility drop down menu, and you select run as administrator. And that solves a lot of issues. Then it opens up, you go to the website, enter in your credentials, buy a VIN number, and then you open up TechLine Connect within that. You don't go to the desktop to double click and open it there, even though it downloaded something. You open it up within the internet window, the web browser window, if you will. The first time or two, it's going to feel really awkward. But after that, you're just going to fly through it.
Yeah, see, there's a lot of insight. Just those few things. I mean, can you imagine not knowing that and diving in? And that's kind of the thing that's pushing off so many people from jumping in. You know, the huge investment. Is this going to work? Am I just going to alienate my customers? Am I going to be towing these cars to the dealer and paying for braked modules and programming?
And yet it's another sales pitch to get off your tail and network, get to know people. You know, and even if they aren't these big names, there's a lot of people that nobody knows about that are freaking geniuses and really, really nice people, and they will help you out, especially if you can help them back sometime. Wherever that may be, you don't know. Most people are pretty much willing to help. And there's a bunch of Facebook groups aimed at programming. Also, the vendor, you know, where you buy your equipment from, there's often a lot of support. You buy your stuff from NAPA. Usually there's somebody around that can kind of help you out here and there, or put you in touch with somebody that could. You buy a piece of equipment from AES Wave. There's people there to help, or they will put you in touch with somebody that help. And then independent sellers, which there's a bunch of. So where you buy it also helps immensely. And then like training, right? We already talked a little bit about the NAPA AUTOTECH training. Also, another one I don't think should be ignored is L1 training. Keith Perkins has a website with stuff. It's not a lot of money. Lots of stuff on there. Lots of stuff on there on programming.
He keeps adding too, which is fantastic.
Yes. The material he's got on there right now is freaking brilliant. So I think if it's something you're thinking about getting into or are getting into, a subscription to that would definitely pay huge dividends.
I definitely think so too. I browsed it. I seen like my third module that needed programming. You know, I ended up going on the L1 and kind of checking things out, saying, man, that's something, you know, I get a good tech in here. I can get some breathing room, get some training in. Like, you know, I'm going to really focus hard on what they're offering here and see what else is out there too. And I definitely was impressed with their site. And then I kind of gave up on the idea, which is a whole nother story. But I'm back at it, looking at it again and getting some wonderful information from you And I like the idea of what you said too, that just resonates with me. Like pick a line, let's just start there, grow. I mean, I think that's a fantastic solution to just get in there and start doing something.
Yeah, especially if you could tie it into like Diag. You're seeing these cars regularly anyways, even if you don't have to program them. But now you have the factory scan tool as well. And oftentimes that opens up worlds. Not all the time. I don't want to make the OE tools seem like they're always just so great. Sometimes they blow. Sometimes they absolutely suck. And it's better off to go get an aftermarket tool. That's why we have so many aftermarket tools too. Even when you have the OE tool, you got a stack of aftermarket tools because sometimes they do stuff better than the OE tool does. Oftentimes related to like graphing and watching data, but then there's times where the aftermarket tool doesn't give you certain data that the OE tool does. And, it's a back and forth. And I don't know that there's necessarily a good rule for that other than trial and error. We've been mentioning Chrysler. You had said that can be a headache, and it's not so much a headache. It's expensive. You're going to buy an MDP. That's the interface. And that's the newest interface. That's why I say it. You could probably pick up a Micropod 2 and that might serve you quite well, but there's vehicles that it will not work with. So there you sit. You're looking at an MDP. So you have that expense. To program, it's not a subscription. I'm pretty sure it's 3 subscriptions. You have a Tech Authority, which is the aftermarket factory website, if you will. So it's not, Chrysler.com. It's Tech Authority. You need that subscription. Then you need a YTech 2.0 subscription. That's the software, if you will. And then you have to buy a subscription for the ECU programming. So you're going to have $120 to $150 in subscriptions to program a module. And it works like gangbusters. And I think when you get it going, it's pretty easy to use. Pretty much does everything for you. I don't think there's much for you to think about, but pay a good deal of money to program a module.
Some of us small town guys that might listen, they're definitely going to say the same thing. Well, wait a minute. What do you mean I have to pay for that programming? It's a lot of educating the customers, man.
I'm sorry. It's not Windows. They're not Microsoft. The updates aren't free.
But that is something too that we think about. Like, hey, if we're going to invest this time, this energy, this money, we have to figure out how we're going to advertise it. Figure out how we're going to get the experience so I can go to another shop and say, hey, I'm your solution for this problem. Stop towing it an hour away. I'm right here for you. Again, I guess for smaller shop owners, by the time you see the ROI, there's a lot to consider. But again, I also stand on my statement that if you don't get into this, I firmly believe there's not going to be much business for you out there. I mean, I think this just has to be done.
Yeah, you're going to be subletting a lot. You're going to be relying heavily on the dealer or a mobile tech or another shop to be able to do the programming for you. It's getting to the point with virtually every module is going to have some sort of programming involved, programming, coding. I know there's entities that will do remote programming where you have either buy their system or you have a certain setup and they will log in and do programming. You don't have to go through the BS of subscriptions and maybe owning multiple laptops and all that, or buying a laptop that's got a bunch of partitions or anything like that. But you still kind of sack somebody because you plug your stuff in, you make a phone call or an email or fill out something online to submit a request. And then sure, you can go do something while you're waiting for somebody to respond. But they respond. Now that tech, there is going to be a tech with the car through the programming process because they're going to have to run the key. And depending on what we're programming, right? It depends. They're going to have to get the car set up for programming. Some cars are a little bit different than others. There's good programming habits. 1, have a good quality battery maintainer. Not a battery charger, a battery maintainer. Clean DC voltage. And then 2 is usually you want the car to kind of think it's in, I don't want to say like a rest state, but it's going to be usually you trip the door so that it thinks the driver's door is shut with the latch usually. And then another really good idea is to connect the driver's seatbelt. A lot of manufacturers don't require that at all. It's really kind of a BMW thing, but I find myself doing it on everything. It feels like a good habit. And then of course the key, you're going to have the key on, maybe a push button start, but you know what I mean. Somebody's going to be standing there waiting while the remote tech is doing their thing. And it's like, okay, can you cycle the key off, cycle the key on? Okay, we got done. Now we need to do a parameter reset, or we need to add keys, or we need to do this. Do you have 2 keys? Do you have a key? And now the real only difference is you could have had a trained tech do all of that and didn't need the remote service at all, because you had most of the equipment anyways, right? You buy the wrap system, you've got a J-box. So now you just need a little bit of know-how, and yeah, you probably get your butt handed to you a couple times. But, if you've got a good battery maintainer and good programming habits, I'm probably going to sentence everybody listening to this that their very first module, they will brick just for saying this, but it just doesn't happen. If you're doing things the right way, using a quality interface, CARDAC, I think, is overwhelmingly accepted as, let's just say, recognized or verified interfaces by the manufacturers. And the Snap-on one is a rebadged CARDAC or DrewTech. But it's also kind of like scan tools too. Sometimes you want to have multiple J-boxes around just in case, because the CARDAC won't work and won't work. And I went and grabbed, whatever, the AUTOTECH, and boom, goes right through. So you might have a J-box in your shop right now. It's the interface for your aftermarket scan tool.
We have mostly domestic vehicles. I went the Snap-on route. Not sure that was the smartest move I could have did.
I don't know which Snap-on you bought. It'd be very hard to spend the money on the flagship stuff.
I bought the Zeus. I did get a good deal because they gave me bad information when I bought the Triton on the capabilities. They accidentally represented it could do things it couldn't do. And so they did take care of me when they upgraded me rather well, but still. And then right after that, I seen other alternatives. There's another company that's kind of taken industry by storm. You mentioned earlier, Top Don. Then when it came to lab scopes, there's other options out there. And
for 98 years, the NAPA name has meant quality parts and service. It also reflects top quality training programs to help you build a more successful vehicle repair business. No doubt, the technician shortage is impacting everyone, but you're not facing this battle alone. NAPA has the solution by making NAPA AUTOTECH training available near you. NAPA AUTOTECH provides automotive aftermarket technicians career development opportunities through structured, disciplined, measured, and high-quality technical instruction, no matter the technician or service advisor's skill level. This instruction enhances understanding of vehicle systems, increases first-time repair capability, and overall customer satisfaction. It also prepares technicians to become ASE certified. It's a fact technicians who receive training to improve their knowledge and skills have a higher sense of job satisfaction. This reduces technician turnover and increases productivity, directly improving a shop's profitability. It is vital to the success of a shop's business that today's technicians are equipped to diagnose and repair today's complex vehicles. With our ever-changing technology, the technician's knowledge and skills need to be updated and refreshed on a regular basis. As you labor over the decision of whether to send your techs to get their skills sharpened, keep in mind, NAPA AUTOTECH training is an investment, not an expense, and it's available to all. Much of NAPA AUTOTECH's training is offered in more than one format to accommodate varieties of learning styles and training preferences so each person can maximize their learning. Whether you're more of a hands-on person or enjoy learning at your own pace, NAPA AUTOTECH is here to provide you with the training you need in the format that works best for you. To learn more about what NAPA AUTOTECH offers, contact NAPAAutotech.com. The broken thinking, not in your situation, I'm not saying your thinking was broken, but that I see out there is there's this idea that we need to buy a scan tool and that will cover us. Already you're setting up to fail. I don't care what one you buy. You're pretty much doomed unless you only work on one car line or a couple of car lines, and then the coverage from that aftermarket tool is such that you will be covered. But most of us, there isn't one. The soulless will do. The scan tool functions will do everything you need it to do that the Zeus will do. You can record and upload it to ShopStream Connect and look at, I think 16 graphs at once. You don't have to go blow a ton of money. I still feel like every independent shop should have a Snap-on scan tool. Maybe not the Zeus, but a Solus or
like even the Modus or
yeah. So I think therethere's room. You're always going to run into it where this tool won't do it, that tool will. You got a Snap-on, then you should have the lower end one. Hopefully you have enough budget, because if you're looking at the the Zeus or the Zeus Plus, the money you saved going with, we'll just pick on the Solus. It doesn't have to be that. It could be the one for up, but I don't think it's Triton. I thought there was another one in there. You have money now to pick yourself up like an auto, the MS909, the Top Done, Phoenix Plus, and maybe even both, because yet again, you have that issue where you have these three and you're going to go try to, calibrate a seat weight sensor on a Honda and it won't, you grab the AUTOTECH because it's been, rock solid for you. It's your favorite tool. It won't do it. Oh, what the hell? And you go grab the Top Done and you hook it up and it won't do it. And you're like, oh no, is this a dealer only thing? And the freaking Snap-on does it.
Right. Yeah, they throw some curves, don't they?
It goes the other way probably more often. The Snap-on won't do it. AUTOTECH, Top Done, no problem. Boom, done.
I don't know. There's some industry buzz on the domestic Top Down struggling a little bit on some of that. We'll see what happens, but they do so much on the foreign. That's what really helped me. Just like what you said, an old Solus or Modus, I should have grabbed. This was kind of before Top Down was making the buzz. I would have loved to grab one of them, but an AUTOTECH and maybe a Pico is how I wish I would have went. There's just so many Pico users. There's so much support. They have the auto specific stuff. You have waveforms there. It's like language, right? Everybody talks Pico, so a lot of people say, if you're new, go with Snap-on, and I see the value in it. It does help you on the guided stuff. It does give you a waveform and then it stops, so when you start advancing, it's like, wait a minute, I could have advanced better had I just went straight with the Pico. I'm going to go against a lot of what the advice out there is. You're going to be doing this. You're going to be doing it for years. I think go right away with.
I think a lot of that too is fear, and it's not to dump on the Snap-on scopes. They're fine. They're going to work. But I think a lot of times it's that fear that's using a lab scope is so difficult and you're very awkward because it's new. I think it's just over time that you get a little bit of comfort and then you realize it wasn't so bad. And if you're hanging out in forums or on pages where there's high-end text showing you high-end things, you start to get this idea that the stuff you're going to be looking at is going to be literally looking for these little anomalies. I think that does not represent day in, day out use of a scope. You're not nitpicking waveforms. It's really Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other. If you're scoping an ignition coil, most likely there's 3 more to compare to, or 5 more, or 7 more. Okay, you don't have to have this known good pattern memorized. Or through time, just understanding electricity to a degree even, you can kind of look at the waveform and look at its behavior and go, okay, I know what it's doing. I see. If you're scoping a blend air door motor, like you can see like, okay, here's the signal from the HVAC control module or from the control head. I'm changing the temperature and I'm watching this blend air door move and I can see the position sensor sweep. You don't need to know a whole lot. You don't need somebody to set that up for you. If you're looking at the wiring schematic and you see that this sensor is getting 5 volts to it, you probably don't need an auto setup. You can probably figure out to set the scope up to see 5 volts very clearly. And I'm probably biased. Pico is so good that it hides a lot of mistakes. If you're using very poor scope habits, it will still get you a very, very usable waveform.
The thing that I think that just helps the new guy, you're all over the internet looking at scope stuff. You see Pico everywhere and you're understanding what they're talking about because you have the same software and you know everything that they're showing you on their case study. That's what you're doing every day. Snap-on users, scope users, we have to now translate it over a little bit. And does it hinder me very much? Personally, no. At first it did. It was kind of freaky. Now it's not a big deal anymore. But as for pushing people upwards, and then like, okay, if I want to get in the ring with the big dog so I can learn a little more, we'll just say, and like, hey, and I'm looking at these case studies or I got something here and, send the file. And then when they're talking to me about it or I'm talking to them, we're just talking the same language right away. And I think that would help guys learn faster. I really do. So that's why I take a different approach. I was always told start with the Snap-on scope for user friendliness. And I don't want to say it's bad advice. It's not.
Depending on how far back we go, kind of in around like the first Modus, it wasn't that far off from like the Pico. Pico had just come out really with the, it would have been the 3423, and side by side, Pico was faster, but they had the same memory, the sample point memory or same buffer size. They're the same vertical resolution. Pico was a little bit faster. But then when they came out with that 4000 series, they really just blew everyone else out of the water. There was nothing else aimed at auto technicians that held a candle to it. I don't think it's being biased. I think the numbers alone, you can look at it, and they've just gotten faster and more memory and faster and more memory. And, then it's not even the dump on other scopes. It's just, I think they're the bar. It doesn't mean something below the bar doesn't work. There's a lot of people out there using snap-on scopes very successfully. There's a lot of people out there using Autel scopes very successfully. So it's not really to crap on anything else.
Yeah, and I like my Zeus for that. I like using the scope on it. I mean, it is very intuitive. It's quick, fast. One-man shop speed was everything for me. Anything that saved me time was a huge deal, because I had to deal with customers half the day. So, I really had like 4 hours. Otherwise, I'm staying late. So I'm trying to cut down how late am I staying tonight, to get everything done. And so anything that saved me time was a bonus. And so that's one thing that I definitely applaud Snap-on on. A lot of people think, it's a crutch or it's this or it's that. Well, how are you using it? Are you using it to save time, but you're still taking the time to understand your systems and what's going on? Or are you just using it in a part swapper mentality? For the tech that's not trying to use it as a crutch, but he's trying to be efficient, I think it's a wonderful tool. It really is. So, that's why I was saying, I want to be careful about brand bashing. I just think they serve different markets in different ways, kind of thing, or different needs.
Yeah, if we go back far enough, I can remember they would have the Vantage, the old Vantage, Snap-on Vantage, and like a Fluke 9798. The Fluke was a better scope, but they would use the Vantage to tell them where to hook up and then give them an idea for the settings. You could still do that. You could bust out your Virus and help you set up your Pico if you so wanted. At least, they give you the diagrams a lot of times, the connector diagrams, and give you ideas of where you can get this signal. Do you have to go right to the sensor? Can you go to the module, or is there a connector? And eventually you find you're just going to be using wiring schematics, and you kind of have an idea what you're looking for, and it just gets easier. Starting out, you should try to use it every day, but I think you get into, depending on kind of problems that you're seeing regularly, there might be days where you don't have the scope out. It just doesn't fit what you're doing.
Those days suck.
For the programming stuff, I kind of mentioned it, the PC situation. Nobody's at battle over it, but I think there's two schools of thought. One is, and it's the one I do, and I'm not saying it's the right way at all, but I buy refurbished laptops, and I have a laptop pretty much for every car line. And I'm paying $250, $300 per laptop. I found a guy who has Lenovo's. They got, newer generation Intel i5 processors, 8 to 16 gigabytes of RAM, and a solid state drive, usually 256 gig. Offhand, I can't think of a car line that really needs bigger, but I'm sure there is. Usually go to those websites we talked about, which you find on nastf.org or OEM One Stop. And I think it's OEM, the number one, stop.com. Or you just Google OEM One Stop, it'll take you where you need to go. Those websites will have like minimum system requirements, and you can click on that. I wouldn't try to get one that meets the minimum. I would get one that exceeds it quite handily. And most stuff I think is still kind of wanting Windows 10 Pro. Kind of stick with that, at least for now. Like, you can pick up these refurbished laptops, I'm sure nationwide, $200, $300, $400. And for me, at that price, I'm okay buying multiple ones. The other idea is you find somebody, or do it yourself, buy a laptop that either you can flip-flop hard drives out of quite quickly and easily, or a laptop with a massive solid-state drive. And the reason I say solid-state drive, I think anybody would tell you to go with solid-state drive, is your boot-up times are so much faster. Computer speed, if you will, is so much faster. and then you partition it. And that's basically dividing up that hard drive, driving up that space where this one computer will act like multiple computers. When you boot it up, it'll go to a screen where now you can click which partition to use. So maybe you have a GM one, a Ford one, a Toyota one, a Nissan one, a BMW one, a Volvo one, whatever. And then you click on that and we'll open up that partition, and it has that software on there ready to go. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, which way you want to go.
I can see the value in keeping things separate too, especially if you're getting the laptops like the way you're buying them. That's pretty smart too. I can see the value in that.
And there's people out there that will sell you laptops kind of set up ready to go. Isaac Rodell does it. And there's others. I mean, there's multiples that you can go out and then however much money and it shows up kind of ready to go. Or you're going to have to plunk down your money, set up username and passwords and all that. But the laptop's ready to go. Just so people don't think they have to go out and buy this hardcore gaming computer, which are fun to use. They're really fast, but you don't need it. It's just not that taxing. I'm trying to think what else is worth covering. I guess there's just car lines that if you can get the OE interface, I would not mess around. BMW comes to mind, the iComs, but again, intergalactic back order. The Autoland Scientech iScan series, iScan 3s, whether the SF or the full bloat iScan 3 will emulate an ICOM. The ICOM is the interface quite well. So if you really need it, that is a way to go. Really, really powerful aftermarket scan tool along with it. Something to consider. But, if you can pick up an ICOM, and it's technically, I think, an ICOM A Next, that's really the way to go. And they're not that expensive. BMWs can be finicky. Mercedes, OE is brutally expensive, and J2534, I don't know if it even works yet anymore. I think they had a run where it was kind of working and then not working, and then they took it offline and then they brought it back and it worked and it didn't work. And that's one, if you're going to work on those, you might as well just get Zentry, pay.
Yeah. What does the conversation look like? I guess, it's going to vary if it's for a customer walking through your shop doors or another shop. I guess another shop would be pretty darn understanding. You run into something, the equipment I have is not going to program this. What do you do at that point? What if it tried or something? You're trying and now we don't know, did we cause an issue here or not? And what does that experience look like?
Luckily, extremely rare. If I can't do it, that might be more common than something going so sideways. I bricked an instrument cluster on a GM, and I don't know why. I have not bricked that many modules. I mean, it's very low. I bricked the BMW cast module because I was screwing around. So I earned that. Seth reminds me a lot about it.
Does he?
He's right, but he's right. I had it coming. Like, stuff going really sideways is pretty darn rare. To be more open about it, I had used Nissan R2R successfully for a couple of years. And then I got these vehicles in, they're like 2020, 2021s. And I'm pretty sure that the Nissans I had done before that successfully also had secure gateways. So I don't think that was the issue. These two vehicles, Nissan R2R, left me hanging. It took the OE tool interface to get them done. In a situation where another shop would have sent them to me, I mean, you just got to be honest. Like, I messed around with it. I've followed my procedures. It should work. It's not working. It could be on their end. I guess it could be on my end. There's times a GM, right? You're going to program a GM, usually on a Friday afternoon. Shop's like, hey, could you quit program this for me? Yeah, no problem. Yeah, you just sealed your fate. TechLine Connect will be down. Or something's funky going on. And all you can do is level with them. I think it's on their end. You can try to call tech support, but usually if it's on their end, good luck. They're getting flooded with calls. Maybe look at some of your forums, Facebook groups, see if there's other people saying like, hey, is anyone else struggling with TLC? Yep. Okay. It's probably on their end. And then you just level with them. You tell them it's, on their end, you're going to have to wait. Or, I've had luck programming these before, but it is not working. And, it might be where I'm going to have to change equipment, but I can't get this one done for you. I think you just level with people.
Is it good going into the job to not market yourself as the answer to their solution, but an answer, then sort of disclaimer up front at all? Like, we'll see if we can get this done for you, or...
I don't assume that it won't work. That's the thing. I'm really trying to help remove fear because usually it works. If you have an interface that's, a quality interface, you've downloaded their software, that contains the drivers. You've downloaded and you've paid your money and you follow the directions. Usually it works.
I'm starting to see this mental comparison in my head where, briefly back to the scope, and you see all these crazy case studies and these weird things and people struggling. My day in and out is I hook up the scope, I see a red flag right there, backup done, diagnostics is done more times than not, and so maybe this programming I'm kind of hearing from you too is like, we're as an outsider looking in, when the information comes and people that are users, they're probably not going to sit there and talk about the day to day. It's going to be the anomalies they're going to speak up on. And so I'm catching that. I'm kind of seeing that similarity, how it was when I first picked up a scope. It's like, how am I ever going to get through all this crazy advanced stuff? And that's rare. It's rare that it comes up, and it's great to have that community out there when it does come up.
And we can't forget the car itself. I gave two possibilities. It's on the OE side, the programming system, or something's wrong with what I'm doing, or maybe my interface, not saying it's broken, but there's something going on here. You can't forget the car. Like, what's the situation that's arisen where they're like, they've diagnosed this module's bad? Well, the assumption is they diagnosed it properly. So all is, here's the new one, here's the old one. You're probably not going to re-diagnose it for them. That would be a big loss. So you're following whatever the procedure is for replacing that module. So if that module that they deemed as bad communicates right now, there may be such kind of an inhale, exhale thing going on where it sucks some data out of the old module. Then it tells you to plug the new module in, and then you exhale that information and maybe update the firmware, and boom, it's done. But if they misdiagnosed it, depending on the situation, it might not be your issue or on the OE end, it's the car. The car is broken. A lot of times what happens is that really leads into, well, we kind of thought that might be it, or we had read somewhere online that might be it, or there was a TSB on that module, but it doesn't have really anything to do with the symptom. What would it cost for you to just kind of take a look at it? And it might turn into a diagnostic job for you.
Yeah, because if I drove over there and you took your time, now you can't complete the task, you're out that time and money. That's going to sour things for you, right?
I personally have a very rough time ever telling anyone that I am like the solution for anything, because if I tell somebody like, hey, Riverside is the place, we can handle that brake job, no problem. Darn well it's going to hell in a handbasket.
Yep, absolutely. I'm terrified to say that.
I don't treat programming any different than I would diagnostics or brake jobs, or, usually my standard response to people is one way or another. You think you could maybe figure out this problem one way or another, and kind of leave it up to, hopefully I get it done. Maybe it'll be messy, but I'm gonna give it my best. If I'm going down, I'm going down swinging.
Right.
It's hard for me to ever be that overly confident. Can we get this car in? Could you maybe program? We put a new blah, blah, blah in it. It's like, yeah, I'm sure I could brick it today. Yeah.
Right.
That's how I answer that.
Right.
And then when it actually happens, I can be like, well, I told you.
Oh my God. Yeah. It would be great if it was only that easy, right?
The GM instrument cluster I bricked for the life of me. I don't know why. I don't know why. I still have it. I'm going to try to see if I can save it for fun, just to see if I can do it. But I just went and got him a different instrument cluster and made it work.
Yeah, I have a bad taste in my mouth from one of them too. I had an Escalade come in the shop. They had check engine light, and I said, "Hey, right away, your instrument cluster's acting crazy. It's gonna die any second. I don't know if it's gonna be in my shop or when it goes home or whatever. This thing's on borrowed time. Might be the problem. I haven't even hooked the tool yet up, but I'm not buying you a cluster, right? So had this communication, the CYA conversation. I can't even remember what the heck was wrong with the car. Anyways, the cluster goes out while it's in the shop. course, I pulled it into the garage, and it just goes black. This is before I even, worked on anything else. It was coming in for intermittent no start. And I want to say it was like a bad connection and a weak starter, if I remember right. So anyways, the thing dies. I call them, haven't even touched the car yet. It went black. I don't know if it's going to go, life's going to come back to it or not. Has this happened? They said, no, it just flashes and stuff. Great. So we proceed to get it to be able to start and then all that kind of stuff. And they take it and they say, we're probably just going to trade it in. Don't worry about it. It's probably going to come on. And then guy got Facebook bashed. Well, I brought my Cadillac there and now the cluster's dead. And anyways, I should have just bought him a damn cluster in hindsight. But
I don't know if it's quite 20 years, but it's pushing 20 years that I've been programming. And I can think of 2 modules legitimately bricked. It was me screwing around. One of them, I have no idea why. And I think one other one isn't technically bricked. It was a Saturn body control module. And for some reason that yet I don't understand what I was doing, I punched in the wrong mileage for the odometer. I have no idea. Like, it's so dumb. At the time, for my skill set, my skill level, I had to get another body control module and make sure I put the right mileage in there. Now, maybe I could have figured out how to rewrite it or virginize it or something like that. Maybe. I don't want to oversell that either. Or maybe I know somebody that could have helped me out. But at the time, it was done. It was one and done. There's no rewriting it. That's quite a few years ago. That was long before I knew anything about or even heard of like EEPROM and stuff like that. So I hope I answered a bunch of questions. And
yeah, definitely gave some good insight and gave me some good, kind of just revealed some similar past experiences to where you make me think of my old boss. My first boss I had when he was going down memory lane telling me everybody was freaked out when disc brakes came out. And I laughed and thought that was so silly. But yeah, here I am looking at it the same way, a lot of fear. It's hard when your name's on the door though, too. You're responsible for everything in the investment. You have to tell the wife, well, we've spent all this money and we haven't really got a return on it, So there's a lot of fear out there. And I think you did a pretty darn good job of making me get a little more realistic look at what's going on.
Yeah, and I think as you have the capability to do it, you find yourself doing it more often. When you're always looking for ways not to program, like at the last line of the installation instructions is program module, but you plugged it in and it starts and it runs and everything works. Maybe I won't program it. Or it's just as easy to have the apprentice run it over to the dealer or call up the mobile tech to stop by and they program it and hand you the bill, and it's less headache for you. I get it. But programming is something you're interested in. I wouldn't fear it. Get yourself a good battery maintainer. There's a lot of them out there. Top Done makes one. Clores makes a really good one. Schumacher, some people love, some people hate. Power Max. There's a lot of them, right? Get a good battery maintainer, get a laptop. Just if you want to start out, either seek somebody out that builds these laptops, pay them the money, have it set up for the car lines you think you're going to work on, or program even if you don't have the interface just yet. And now you have this laptop, probably some support, or just get yourself a nice refurbished laptop with that meets, or really exceeds the minimum specs on those websites for whatever car line you're looking at. Get the appropriate interface. If the factory interface is available, oftentimes is same or less money than the J2534 tool. Get it. And you work on those cars anyways for diagnostics, get the factory interface. Not so available. You plan on doing multiples right off the bat and they all look like they're supported by one interface, and it's, not even an advertisement. I think it's just generally accepted. DrewTech's CarDAC Plus 3. You get that guy and then pick up some training. And I think, if you're affiliated as a NAPA AutoCare, you have that catalog of training. I think Advance has something similar. WorldPack maybe has something similar. L1 training. Keith has got a heck of a amount of data there. Scanner Danner. There's resources out there. Get hooked up into some Facebook groups. Hang out. Be friendly. Be willing to help. and, coach you through it. I wouldn't fear it. The first few are going to be awkward. You're going to feel every button you touch is doing something wrong. It's going to melt the laptop down and light the car on fire. A lot of times I ask myself before I hit a button, it's like, what's the worst that could happen?
I just ask myself if I can pay for whatever's going to happen. If the answer is yes, I go. So
I just feel very strongly that when the stuff goes sideways, the reasons are usually bad habits or just bad luck. And usually it's bad habits. Didn't have a good maintainer on there. You didn't have it at the voltage it should have been at. One of those car lines, probably more on the Euro world, maybe Nissan. Some people will probably bark at me that all they've ever done is Nissan R2R, nothing but good luck. Great. But most of them, if they say they support that interface, like the AUTOTECH, you're probably good to go. And follow good habits, follow the instructions, pick up some training. I think you'll be just fine.
Sounds good. I definitely appreciate being here and getting this information with you.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks for bringing it up. I mean, I would have never thought to do anything like this until you said something. So, yeah.
Hopefully it helps some other people, out there to maybe in a similar situation, or you answered a lot of questions, that put things into perspective and definitely eased some of my concerns, and help give me a realistic view. This is what I'm going to be dealing with or facing. And it was definitely something I wish happened a long time ago. So hopefully this helps somebody. It leads to the if, though, right? Maybe the next show, the big if.
Well, no, we'll do the follow-up where you brick a module, the first one you did.
Oh, yeah.
We can do the first few minutes of you just yelling at me and
Matt Ponslow. That guy, no, you'll see the tow. We're not that far apart. You'll see the tow truck pull up. What is he doing?
I thought he had a podcast. He's doing videos now.
Yeah, we'll get a hold of Hagen and Paul Danner and tell them there's a big hockey tournament there, so I can get them there too. Maybe they'll show up and we'll just have this big U2 event, right?
Is Glenn hog tying Matt with a card act too?
What? It'd be fun. But no, the big if is I don't know for a spoiler alert how you want me to word it, but remember we were talking about the other employment deals. So that I'm going to do some kind of programming regardless how that goes. At least one car line, probably GM and Ford. Although I'd probably make more money on Chrysler around here, honestly. Their modules around here seem to fail more often. Yeah, that ties into how deep to go. And you threw a curve at me earlier too. ADAS. It ties into this eventually somehow.
It's one of the markets that I don't know how long it will last, but right now I think it's a good gig to get into if you have shops that aren't going to get into it, can't get into it. Space is an issue, and if they don't have the space, they're in trouble. So you can be that helping hand, right? If they're thinking about how it's going to cost them, they're thinking about it wrong. You're going to help them, and hopefully both of you can make money, and you're properly servicing a vehicle.
Win for everyone. It really is.
It's hard to get people to think about that sometimes because it's new. They're looking at how much it costs to get done. They're looking at the cost of the equipment, cost of the space. If you're the one acquiring the space and the tooling, you certainly can't do it for free, but you really shouldn't be sending these cars out the door not properly repaired either. Because when do we get our version of the John Eagle case? I don't know, and I don't want to be the shop that does. Somebody else can take that on.
Yeah, I definitely don't want that. It's not if, it's when.
Well, thank you again for coming on, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Taking the time to do all that for us and everything, this show and all that's a really awesome thing, man. So thank you for having me again.
I mean, I could have been outside mowing, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I got you out of mowing. Okay. So this wasn't free. Awesome.
I got to find a kid to assign this to. Thank you everyone for listening. If you have any ideas or comments, feedback on the podcast, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm pretty easy to find on social media. Otherwise, you can email me at mattfonslowpodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, everyone, take care.
You've been listening to Matt Fonslow, diagnosing the aftermarket A to Z on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Follow Matt on your favorite listening app. He's very interested in what you have to say. Let him know what you'd like him to cover and come on the show. Matt is all for advancing the aftermarket. Find Matt Fonslow on social media and connect or on aftermarketradionetwork.com.